Have alien saucers crashed in the United States?
It didn't look like the airplane, didn't look like a missile.
Have alien probes come down in Siberia?
Unlike most UFO cases, this one should be and can be resolved.
Have alien craft landed in England?
I observed the craft probably for about 15 minutes on the ground.
Does the U.S. government have proof of alien life? In June of 1947, a private pilot near Mount Rainier was the first in the United States to report unusual craft traveling at unprecedented speeds. Hundreds of reports of flying discs followed, but one still grips the public's imagination.
Many people were told to keep their mouth shut about the things they saw.
A lot of us were still in shock and in disbelief what we found.
The true story is yet to be told.
I believe that there was a flying out of space object.
Encounters with extraterrestrials, abductions, reports of spaceships. Over the last 50 years, these accounts have multiplied by astronomical proportions. Is there life elsewhere? And does it visit us? If it does visit us, there has not been a site where the visitation has been more celebrated than Roswell, New Mexico. Many UFO believers insist there was an alien saucer crash in Roswell in 1947. They claim not only that parts of the wreckage and the alien crew were recovered, but that the U.S. government orchestrated an extensive cover-up. No other UFO case is quite as legendary. Perhaps no other case has so many accounts, even as new witnesses and fresh testimony have continued to emerge. One account says it all began on June 14, 1947, with the discovery of some tinfoil. Rancher Mac Brazel found on the Foster Ranch an area about 200 yards in diameter, which was littered with bright wreckage. Tinfoil, rubber strips, a rather tough paper, and sticks. He thought it was so insignificant that he did not report it to the local police until July 7th, while visiting Roswell to sell wool. Sheriff Wilcox of Roswell alerted the local field of the Army Air Force, home of the only unit in the world equipped with the atomic bomb. The field's intelligence officer, the late Jesse Marcel, and others collected remnants from the ranch and returned to the base. The press officer issued an excited release about a flying disc, which was quickly taken up by the local media.
The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence officer of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force Roswell Army Airfield was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office of Chavez County. The flying object landed on a ranch near Roswell sometime last week. Not having phone facilities, the ranchers stored the disc until such time as he was able to contact the sheriff's office, who in turn notified Major Jesse A. Marcel of the 509th Bomb Group Intelligence Office. Action was immediately taken, and the disc was picked up at the rancher's home. It was inspected at the Roswell Army Airfield and subsequently loaned by Major Marcel to higher headquarters.
The press release stated in essence that we had in our possession a flying disc, and that Major Marcel, our base intelligence officer, was flying it to Fort Worth to turn over to General Ramey, who was the commanding general of the 8th Air Force.
The fear was that the discs were Soviet aircraft. General Ramey sought urgent identification. He sent for a weather expert.
I was on duty at Fort Worth in the base weather station. The phone rang and it was General Ramey. And he said, "Get your ass over here as fast as you can. If you have a car, drive over here. If you don't have a car, take the first car with keys in it and come over here or walk over here." And so I just responded, "Yes, sir," and away I went.
The weather officer recognized the remains of unusual specialist equipment for tracking winds, a radio wind or ray wind balloon, and reflector or target.
When I got in there, the inside of the room, the general was in there, and Marcel was there assuring me that this was a flying saucer he'd picked up in New Mexico. I told him that it was a ray wind balloon and a ray wind target, and if it wasn't, I'd eat it without salt or pepper. And I said, "There is no doubt in my mind what that is."
The general's photo opportunity discredited any theories about the disc being an alien craft or a Soviet secret weapon. Press and public interest faded away.
The next morning when I picked up the newspaper, I saw that we didn't have a flying disc. All we had was a weather balloon. That was the end of it. It was forgotten.
But not forever. 30 years later, the Roswell story resurfaced. It began with a chance remark to a UFO writer.
In 1978, it was at a television station, waiting for a late reporter when the manager of the station, who was giving me coffee and a little embarrassed because the reporter was late, said, "The guy you ought to talk to is Jesse Marcel." "Who's he?" "Oh, well, he handled pieces of the wreckage of one of those saucers you're interested in when he was in the military." That got my attention.
What Major Marcel remembered was that the materials found in New Mexico in 1947 were from no weather balloon. In his story, lightning struck a spaceship over Roswell on July 2nd. Bits and pieces of it fell off near Roswell, but the actual crash was on the plains of San Augustine, 100 miles away. There was a wreck and dead aliens. They were found by archaeologists and a soil engineer who were made to leave when the military arrived. All of this made a deep impression on Marcel's son, then aged 11.
My first memory of that time in 1947 was being awakened by my father very late at night, maybe after midnight, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, "I have something I want to show to you." So I went out to the car to help him bring some boxes of this material in, dumped it out over the kitchen floor so we could examine it. And it turns out there's a lot of metallic debris. There's some I-beam material, some foil-like material, some black plastic debris. And he said he thinks this is part of what was then called a flying saucer. When I held one of these I-beams up to the light so the light would reflect across the inner surface, I noticed there was some writing of some kind. It looked like hieroglyphics, and it was all inside the inner surface of the I-beam itself. The symbols themselves look like geometric forms, like circles, balls, triangles, truncated pyramids, various configurations like that. Years after this event occurred, I heard my father talk of how he had people try to bend it with a sledgehammer. even as thin materials as appeared to be. Apparently, it could not be dented even with a 16-pound sledgehammer. I heard my father talk about trying to burn it with a cigarette lighter, and he said it would not burn. He tried it to see if it would shrivel up like tinfoil wood under a cigarette lighter, and apparently it did not.
In 1987, still another story emerged. In this version, the crash was at Corona, New Mexico. 2 miles away, 4 human-like aliens were found. All traces were removed. The cover-up was extensive. A call from Washington warned the local radio station to stop covering the story or be shut down.
You didn't see anything, you haven't heard anything, you don't know anything about this. And let me assure you that we will monitor you to be sure every broadcast that you make, that if you mention it, you're in big trouble. And furthermore, if a report comes to us that you have violated this agreement that we have made, we will tell you that we're not going to wait for a federal communications deal with warnings and all of that stuff. That as of that moment, we are going to cancel your license to operate.
4 years later, in 1991, one more Roswell story comes forth. And in this one, rancher Mac Brazel played a more active role. According to this account, a saucer landed briefly on the Foster Ranch on July 2nd. It lifted off again, and then gouged the ground for 150 feet, leaving wreckage along the way. It came to rest 2 miles away. In this version, Mac Brazel found alien debris and showed it to his neighbors.
This piece of material that he brought, we examined it real carefully. It looked like it was a little larger than a pencil, and it was about 6 or 7 inches long. It was a light tan color, looked like a lightweight wood, but you couldn't burn it or cut it. Mac said that some of the other material looked like a aluminum foil, but when you'd crush it in your hand, it would straighten back out. There were no creases at all. And there was some tape that, or some part of it that had some printing on it. He said in a purplish pink ink. He said it wasn't like Japanese or the way he described it was more like hieroglyphics or something. You know, it was kind of pictures. It wasn't flowers or printing as we know anything.
The rest of this account indicates that at the final crash site, 4 dead alien bodies and a crashed saucer were found. The military removed all traces and telephoned the local undertaker and ambulance driver.
The mortuary officer from the Roswell Army Airfield called and said he would like to ask me a few questions. He wanted to know, did we have, what size baby caskets hermetically sealed? Were they 3'6" or 4 foot? He wanted to know how many that we have in stock and how long would it take us to get more. When I got to the infirmary, there was 3 old field ambulances there where I usually park. Naturally, I looked in and I saw a lot of debris there that looked like some kind of a crash debris of some kind, not particularly an airplane crash, but it was some kind of debris. Then I noticed there was a piece that looked like the end of a canoe that was about 3.5 feet that came up to a point like a canoe, and then I noticed on the outer edges that it looked like some kind of hieroglyphics.
Dennis passed by the hospital laboratory.
We probably hadn't gone over 10 feet, and this door opened, and it was a nurse that I knew that I had worked with before. And she had a towel over her face, and she was gasping, I think, or maybe crying, I'm not sure, but I know she was gasping for breath. And she did see me, and she said, Glenn Dennis, get out of here as fast as you can, because you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Immediately following her were two gentlemen that also had a towel over their face, and they were gasping very much so. They went on across the hall with her and went into the door. It wasn't really just a few minutes, and here comes two MPs, and they said, take this gentleman off the base, you drive him back. Don't let him drive, make sure he's off the base, and you drive the ambulance yourself.
Dennis was removed on the orders of a menacing red-haired captain and an African-American sergeant. The next day, he met the nurse. She was in a terrible state.
I've never seen anyone that she was as white as a ghost. Her hair was just all completely messed up. She would like scratching her face, and then she was just almost completely in total shock. Her story was that they were doing a partial autopsy. On one hospital gurney was a crash bag it was unzipped with two very mutilated small little bodies. She said very mutilated. And she said, for instance, there was a hand that was severed, and they, in a long forceps, they would turn the hand over, and they were describing it only 4 fingers. Small pads on each end of the fingers, and it looks like there's little miniature suction cups.
If this account is true, then General Ramey's photo opportunity had been a hoax.
I've seen photographs of my father holding some debris in General Ramey's office at Fort Worth Air Force Base. And I did not talk to my father about these photographs even years later because I did not even know they existed until a short time ago. But those photographs depict material that I did not see on our kitchen floor that night. Again, the discrepancies being, in the photograph you could clearly see this is metal back paper, not foil-like through and through. In other words, it was paperback metal. The sticks looked like bolts, but to me in the photograph, and again, that was not what I saw. So I have to conclude that the debris that was on General Ramey's office floor was not what we saw on our kitchen floor that night.
And what of rancher Mac Brazel, who originally found the materials?
My husband and Lyman Strickland were in Roswell one day, and they saw Mac going down the street, and he had soldiers around him. And they said Mac didn't even speak to him. He just stuck his head up in the air and walked on. Then when Mac came home, we asked him about it, and he said, well, they told me it was a weather balloon, but if I ever find anything else, nobody will ever know it. And he just wouldn't talk about it. So I don't know what persuasion they used, but he just said they said it was a weather balloon.
(1992), another year, another version of the story. In this one, 2 saucers ostensibly crashed on July 8th. The first crash was 75 miles from Roswell. 4 dead aliens were found. 150 miles away, a second saucer was found by archaeologists. There were more dead aliens and witnesses. At Corona, a menacing figure, a red-haired colonel. At San Augustine, 2 others, a red-haired captain and an African-American sergeant. Were these the same officers who encountered the undertaker Glenn Dennis in the earlier version of the story? The 1994 version. This story has it that on the 4th of July, 2 Franciscan nuns reported something crashing to Earth. This time, the crash was neither at San Augustine nor at Corona. The disc dropped down just north of Roswell. It was found by still another new set of archaeologists. Enter an eyewitness. He claims a secret mission took him to the crash site itself.
We got into several Jeeps and some trucks and so on, went north. And we took the fence and went into the area, and that's where we saw this glow. We saw this craft, and it didn't look like an airplane, it didn't look like a missile, and it was something that was just odd. The craft itself was close to almost a heel shape. I would say it might have been about 15, 20 feet in length. It was kind of half open. One body was thrown up to the base of the arroyo. The other body was half in, half out. They were well-developed individuals, maybe around 5'8", 5'9". Very small nose, small ears. The eyes were round, fully round, not big. They were good-looking people, very good-looking people. Of course, a lot of us were still in shock, and in disbelief what we found.
No military records support Kaufman's story. In recent years, a film claiming to be of an autopsy of a Roswell alien has been put forth. For legal reasons, the actual film cannot be seen on this program. It has been reenacted with the help of ex-8th Air Force Colonel Dan McGovern. In combat, he filmed the original Memphis Belle. He was the first military cameraman to film on the ground at Nagasaki. Much of that film is still classified. What does he think of the film of the alleged autopsy?
Well, from my point of view, I think that the whole setup is very amateur, to say the least.
Autopsies are well lit. The patient doesn't move. The cameras of the day were capable of good focus. Yet the autopsy tape is overexposed, out of focus, in black and white. Wouldn't they have used color?
It would be standard practice. Matter of fact, color is highly recommended for all medical procedures, performing operations, and definitely so in autopsies.
Ray Santilli, who sells the film worldwide, would not do an interview for this program. He would not let McGovern speak to the cameraman who shot the supposed autopsy, nor would he let Kodak test a single frame of the picture. But even so, the cameraman who shot this footage would have had to have stolen this classified film.
It would be impossible to hide 20 rolls of film, especially if it was classified. It has to be accounted for.
Santilli claims that the cameraman was flown in from Washington, D.C., 1,600 miles away. But McGovern has doubts.
Each Army Air Force base had its own base photo lab. They had the capability to process film, shoot film, and take care of anything that was on that particular base.
What about the name Santilli gave for the cameraman, Jack Barnett?
Jack Barnett. Never heard of him. Jack Barnett. Never heard the name. We cameramen are a very tight lot. We knew pretty well who the cameramen were in those early days.
A careful examination of the purported autopsy film was performed by a forensic expert. This forensic pathologist has performed over 20,000 autopsies, including victims of air crashes.
We have what is described as an alien. That is an absolute earth-shattering event. It will never happen before, and it's going to be a long time before it happens again.
How would he go about his first autopsy of an alien?
If I was doing this post-mortem, I would have released all the neck structures from the mouth onwards, and then picked up the heart and lungs, taken it to the dissecting table, and then made a dissection. Instead of which, all I saw was somebody picking up a pair of scissors with index finger and thumb, which is certainly not the way any pathologist would use it, because as you can see, it waves around like so, because you cannot guide it. Most pathologists would tend to use the thumb through one loop and the middle finger through the other loop, so that the index finger is available to guide it and steady it. What they were doing was they were just going inside, picking up an organ, snipping away almost without looking, and putting it into little trays and taking it away, almost like in a butcher's shop, basically, rather than a pathologist's mortuary. Now, it's bad enough if you were to do it in a human being whose anatomy we know reasonably well, but to do it on an alien who is the first ever, I think it's almost sacrilegious for it to be done in that manner. The next thing I noticed was the fact that neither the wound nor the body was measured. Now, usually in any autopsy that I perform, or any one of my colleagues anywhere around the world would perform, the moment they see injuries, they would look at it, examine it carefully, look at the edges, look at varieties, measure it, and then photograph it using a still camera.
Another peculiarity is the short time spent on the autopsy, less than the 4 hours usually spent on a violent death. From the first to the last cut, under an hour and a half elapses.
I would have taken at least 3 or 4 days over it. I would have got myself a number of experts in various disciplines in order to make sure that I do not miss anything. And this clearly did not happen in the autopsy that we saw on the film. I think on the basis of what we have seen, I'm reasonably convinced that this was not a autopsy in the ordinary sense. It was probably fabricated.
What then happened at Roswell? The Air Force now has an explanation. Their $1 million report says that the debris that farmer Mac Brazel found in 1947 was inspected not by Major Jesse Marcel alone. The Air Force even traced the witness who accompanied him. His sworn testimony maintains there was nothing alien about the wreckage. Other witnesses explain that there was a cover-up, but it was to conceal the real purpose of the weather balloon, not evidence of an alien crash. In 1947, in Alamogordo, New Mexico, the New York University Balloon Group was testing and refining balloons to remain at a fixed height. The sun makes ordinary balloons rise. They expand until they burst. The scientists were trying out new materials. To follow them, they attached radar reflectors or targets.
The targets that we were using were constructed of aluminum foil laminated onto a fairly tough white paper, arranged in triangles with balsa wood stiffeners.
The expendable targets allowed the balloon's height and speeds to be followed. Not all flights were recovered. One in particular stands out.
Flight number 4 was launched on June the 4th, and it was tracked by the B-17 and by the radar. It passed out of radar range, and our last information on it, as I remember, was when it was over a little New Mexican town called Arabella with another little town of Bluewater, both of which were exotic places that lodged in my memory ever after. These little towns are 20 miles or so from where the debris was picked up sometime later. The debris that was found, as it was described by the rancher, Mac Brazel, is a quite good description of how the remnants of one of our flights would have appeared after it came back to Earth and dragged across the ground.
At the time, most people were unfamiliar with radical new materials such as neoprene and polyethylene, and post-war shortages led to improvisation.
The manufacturer reinforced the attachment of the reflective laminate to the balsa strips with some tape that the manufacturer happened to have in his shop. And curiously enough, the tape that he had was embossed with some odd flower-like designs. There were pinkish purple abstract designs.
The reason for the security measures was the balloon's true purpose. Amazingly, even many of the team were kept unaware. The balloons were intended to carry microphones to listen for the first Soviet atom bomb. The operation was classified Top Secret Priority 1A. Even the project name was hidden from them, Mogul.
To be truthful, I never heard the name Project Mogul until 1992. I did know the intrinsic purpose of what we were doing, that is trying to detect Soviet nuclear explosions, but I knew none of the military classification, and I had no need to know.
One other thing in General Ramey's office remained to be identified, a heap of strange dark pieces. Irving Newton, the weatherman that General Ramey originally called in to identify the debris, recently met with Professor Moore for the first time. Together, they hope to complete the puzzle.
How do you do, Professor Moore? I've been looking forward to this.
I have to. Come in, let me show you what we have.
I sure would be happy to.
On our flights, we used these corner reflecting radar targets to track the balloons, and you may have seen these before. Have you seen these?
That surely looks like it, except this one is whole. The one we saw there was in shatters.
We had 3 of these on the flight that we launched back in June that went to Arabella, and we carried them on balloons like this. We had strings of 23 of these balloons. The interesting thing here is after this neoprene gets exposed to sunlight, it darkens and discolors, and after it's been exposed to sunlight for a day or so, it gets about this dark, and after it's been 2 or 3 weeks out in the sun, it gets to be like this. Did you see this in General Ramey's office?
Absolutely. You made a perfect explanation of the whole thing. All of this is what was in General Ramey's office. There's no doubt in my mind that that's what we saw.
This meeting confirmed the secret behind the material General Ramey passed off as an ordinary weather balloon. But some aviation archaeologists believe there could be other evidence in the desert, and began looking for clues.
We've been to over a dozen crash sites, mostly experimental aircraft from the 1940s through the 1970s. And at all of them, we've found identifiable materials.
These are fragments of the number 2 prototype YD-49 flying wing. They crashed here in June of 1948, killing the 5 crew members. This crash site is nearly 50 years old. As you can see, it's been well excavated, but there's still lots of debris here. You should find debris at Roswell. There should be material left over. Essentially, the same thing allegedly happened at Roswell as it happened here.
I did visit the Roswell area looking for the crash site. We looked everywhere for debris. We looked in stream beds, we looked in under bushes, in rock crevices, in the sinkholes, any place that would catch debris. And we found nothing. There was clearly not a crash site where I was. If you're at a place that is supposed to be a crash site and you're not finding debris, then either nothing happened or you're in the wrong place.
There are cases where material has been found and analyzed. Vladivostok, one of the former Soviet Union's key naval ports. Not far away lies what is claimed to be the site of the crash of an alien probe. The incident has been investigated by TV journalist George Knapp. He is an expert on Russian UFOs.
Well, we're on our way to Delnogorsk, and 10 years ago, this journey wouldn't have been possible. For one thing, it's a very remote site. The reason we're in this commandeered military helicopter is the only way to get there. Plus the fact that politically 10 years ago when the crash occurred, if we had gone to Vladivostok taking pictures of their harbor and all the military secrets there, we could have been shot or imprisoned. So this is basically the only way to get there. We're going there to find out if the crash in Delnogorsk is the equivalent of the Russian Roswell, because it has all the elements. It has eyewitnesses, scientific testimony, UFO sightings, scientific analysis of the material. We'll see what we find out.
To date, information about the incident is limited. Apparently, there was a crash of an unknown object in Delnogorsk, Siberia in January 1986. Witnesses described a silent 2-meter sphere which was flying through the area parallel to the ground. It traveled at only 40 miles an hour, hardly the speed of a meteorite or fallen satellite or rocket part. The town's heavy metal works are overlooked by an area called Height 611. Witnesses observed the strange sphere fly towards the ridge. It rose and then fell near the crest before crashing in flames.
It was red and orange. It changed color at different times. When it rose, it became brighter. When it fell, it got darker. As it rose, rays of light came out of it.
It happened on the 29th of January 1986. I was walking on the street and I saw a strange object. It was bright yellow. It looked like the sun. It traveled parallel to the ground. A single large beam of light came out of it. Then it disappeared over the hill.
I did not hear any explosion, and I did not see any flash. Yet after it went up and down several times, it vanished over the hill.
The witness is asked what she thinks it was.
It was a UFO.
Subsequent searches found the impact site. Mysterious materials, balls, gauzes, netting were removed from the hillside. They remain in the hands of national science academies. Local scientists have only small samples. Over 3 years, they compiled a 300-page study. Its author points to anomalous features of the case.
At the crash site, we found bits of magnetized flint and about 300 grams of different materials. After the crash at Height 611, there were many UFO sightings, discs, balloon shapes, single lights. It looked as though they were looking for something because they had searchlights. This searchlight was very interesting. It only lit up what it touched. It had no visible beam. Everything leads me to believe it was of extraterrestrial origin.
The metallic wreckage contains extraordinary levels of elements, purer than on Earth, he says. The net-like material is quartz insulation around gold wires, thinner than a human hair. What came from the sky, he argues, is not something made here, but part of the guidance system of an extraterrestrial probe. No other Russian researchers have published their findings or released any of the material.
Unlike most UFO cases, this one should be and can be resolved. Russian institutes have sequestered the Delnogorsk debris for more than 10 years. The world has been told the object was of terrestrial origin. But where are the reports? And more importantly, where is the debris itself? The only scientific analysis released to date suggests the object, whatever it was made somewhere else and is perhaps not of this world.
In December of 1980, there was yet another incident near a military site. This time at RAF Bentwaters, Woodbridge, England, home to American Air Force personnel. An internal U.S. Air Force memo confirms the incident. Charles Holt wrote it from first-hand experience.
In 1980, I was assigned to RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge. It was a combination twin base complex. I was assigned as the deputy base commander. On the evening of the 29th of December, we were having the Combat Support Group Christmas party. We just finished dinner when the police lieutenant on duty came in just white as a sheet and said, "I've got to talk to you and the base commander right now." And he said, "It's back." We looked at each other and looked at him and said, "What's back?" He said, "You know, the UFO, it's back."
3 days beforehand, there was a sighting witnessed by many security police.
We crossed Bentwaters and out the back gate to the Woodbridge base. We proceeded on into the forest to the area where this supposed landing had taken place several nights earlier. There were 3 indentations in the forest, equal distance apart. So I had the disaster preparedness NCO start to take readings. While we were in the process of getting readings, which by the way came out much higher than background radiation, somebody noticed something in the forest, a light. The light was bright like the sun. It was glowing, but it had a dark center, and it appeared to have something dripping off it like molten metal. The light was about 15 or 20 degrees off to our left, almost directly in front of a farmer's field. As we approached the fence at the edge of the field and were watching this object, it suddenly exploded. Now, there was never a sound the whole time. It burst suddenly into 5 objects, 5 white objects, and disappeared. And at that time, we noticed there were several objects in the sky, 2 to the north and 1 to the south. They were brightly lit, multicolored, and they were moving very rapidly together as though they were in formation. We watched them for several minutes, and they kept doing this. We turned and watched the object to the south, and suddenly it came toward us at very high speed. It stopped and sent down a beam like a laser beam. It fell right at our feet and stayed on for several seconds, and just like a flashlight, it clicked off. Managed to get a bit of communication through to the command post and asked them to check with Eastern Radar, who had air defense for that sector. They came back and said no, they weren't painting anything on the screen, but they couldn't explain and wouldn't say a whole lot more. I never saw anything as far as an alien being or anything could be considered human or humanoid or anything of that nature. Although I had a distinct feeling, in fact, I'm firmly convinced that the objects we saw were under some type of intelligent control.
3 days earlier, base patrolmen claimed they made actual physical contact with a UFO.
I was called at the Chow Hall to go out to the East Gate at about 12 o'clock at night, and I proceeded out there. When I arrived there was 2 police units there. They were pointing over into the wooded area, about 300 yards approximately off the East Gate. We seen a glowing white light with some yellow and some blue in it. It was the closer we got, the more intense the bright white light emulated out of it. We got to the edge of the forest, and it was bright enough to make you squint. We were approximately about 60, 70 yards away from the craft. As I got maybe within 10 meters of the craft, it was apparent there was no aircraft that I've seen. It was triangular in shape, like a pyramid, about 9 feet by 9 feet by 9 feet, approximately about 6, 7 feet tall. The fabric of the craft was a very smooth, black, glass-type fabric. Underneath the craft, there was what appeared to be some type of landing struts or landing gear, and they left a triangle impression in the ground. The colors that were still moderately covering the edges of it were red, blue, and yellow. As I proceeded up to the craft and got beside of it, I noticed a writing of some sort or description of some sort on the side of the craft. Undecipherable. I didn't know what it was. The craft itself was warm. I observed the craft probably for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes on the ground, checking it out, encircling it. Then about 15 minutes later, the craft started moving back towards the trees and the woods, back through the woods. And it probably went back probably about 200 feet. We never really got really close to it again. The craft raised up through the trees, and in a blink of an eye, it was gone. What I seen was a controlled aircraft that could fly. Made no sound, and was able to go ahead and maneuver back through the woods and be able to take off in a blink of an eye. That's what I seen. Do we have the capability in the United States Air Force? No. Does anybody else in the world? Not as far as I know of.
Alien craft or secret military devices? Products of distant planets or of our own imagination? The questions persist.